always in the background. But at that time, I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm going to have a career in food. Mm-hmm. It was just more so an obsession.
Yeah. Did you, what was your major in college?
Community health education.
I mean, look.
Yeah, not too far off.
Did you do a lot of writing when you were in college? Like, did you take journalism classes, creative writing classes?
I've always kept a journal. Always. I mean, I have boxes of journals from like high school and college. Classes. Sometimes I go back and look at them. I'm like, oh my God. And I dabbled a little bit in poetry, but I didn't take writing seriously. I didn't take it serious at all. So no, I had hopes of getting a master's in public health and being, this health educator. I never thought that I would write. Always loved books. I've always been the person that, reading 2 or 3 books a month. That's just been my ethos my entire life.
Yeah.
From the time I was a kid.
Yeah.
So they say people that read a lot are actually great writers. I tend to think that's the truth.
For sure. And the reason I wanted to just, dig into that a little bit, because I think there are like these very real barriers that people face in getting into food media. And I think there are these kind of perceived barriers of like, oh, well, I need to have gone to J school, or I need to have gone to culinary school. And, it really seems like you just kind of like made your way, and just your career in food writing started to unfold once you got into that space.
Yeah. And I have to say this too. I was really serious about being a master home cook. A lot of times when I'm doing events or bios, people like to say I'm a chef. I'm like, I am not a chef. I am not a chef. I consider myself a master home cook. I've done all kind of classes, 10-week bread making classes, knife classes. I all the time trying to figure out how I can become a better home cook. So I'm not a chef. I just need to say that, because that always confuses people.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever thought about going to cooking school just to kind of like tighten up your craft?
Who wants to pay for that? Who wants to pay for that when I can just come to your house and go to other chef friends' house and watch them cook and get inspired?
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I think from everything I've done, I like to say, I see someone in the email said, I'm self-taught, unbought, and unbossed. And the self-taught
Big up
thing
to
is
Shirley
real.
Chisholm.
The self-taught thing is real. Shirley Chisholm didn't say that part, but I added that on. I mean, sadly, I've had to teach myself a lot in terms of navigating food media.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I feel like that's something that we both experience, just being in this space where, they're the OGs like Jessica B. Harris and a couple of other folks who've been holding it down, but, they're older, they're tired, they're being pulled in so many different directions. So I feel like, you and I have both had to kind of just figure out how this worked on our own, but also, as you mentioned, we've had each other and other colleagues that we can lean on and figure that out. And I think it's so dope now that, both you and I are able to mentor this new generation and offer suggestions and help them figure out this game in a way that, we couldn't, because we were just in the thick of it. So do you have younger folks that you mentor in terms of like food journalism, like, like kind of structured, like I'm going to work and help you build your career? And I know you're supportive of folks, but is that something that you do?
It's funny, that word mentoring. I mean, I remember being a young adult and thinking that meant, you go to this person's office and they take you to lunch and they answer all your questions. And over time, I realized that mentoring is not necessarily that. And I think there are a lot of young people that I tend to want to see win, and I cling to them and they cling to me, because I learn a lot from them too.
Yeah.
From music to what's happening to, and I think as a person that's 40 plus, if we are not around young people, we're dead. So like Kayla Thompson, who's from Alaska, she's a young chef who's interested in honing her voice and figuring out who she is and how she fits into this space. So she's someone that I routinely talk to. We have a time on my schedule, on my calendar, where twice a month we just do a quick catch up. And it may be like, hey, you should listen to this podcast. How's it going? Nothing formal, but informal. And
Yeah.
at my former employer, Thrillist, I was one of 2 Black people there. And there was a young Black girl. Ironically, I never forget, they said, someone started on the same day as you, and she's from Georgia, and she graduated from the University of Georgia. I was like, oh Lord, this white girl. Who's this white girl? But it was a young Black girl who just graduated from journalism school, from Brady School of Journalism. And so when I was at Thrillist, I made it a point to every single month, I took her somewhere really nice for lunch, and it was just, hey, what are you up to? What are you doing? And even now, after I've left, I sent her a text and was like, you need to join this Slack group, or, have you heard about Ethel's Club? Be a part of this community of other Black creatives doing something. So, because I didn't have that. And so I understand what it means to be trying to navigate this space solo. But those are 2 young ladies that I try to stay in touch with. And there are other people who text me, or, I try to be available for. I'm available for a lot of people a lot of times. It can be tiring, but hey.
Yeah. But I feel you on that whole thing about the reciprocal relationship, because Lazarus Lynch, I've been a supporter of his since the beginning, and really just appreciated his voice, his fearlessness, his brilliance. And so I definitely did all I can to elevate and give him, amplify his projects. But when Vegetable Kingdom was coming out, I called him and was like, yo, can we talk about, I want you to help me figure out like how we market this. How do we kind of show up in the world? Because I feel like, just him and so many people of that generation, like just the way that they think about media and think about like, amplifying projects.
He's the future. He is what we strive to be, and that's to be free and to tell our stories the way we want to tell them. I mean, I love him to pieces.
Yep. I want to just go to somebody actually asked the question. I just wanted to throw at you. They just kind of threw out something. They write, it almost feels like the secrecy about how to ascend and grow in media is intentional, a form of gatekeeping, if you will. That was from Afro's Palea. So do you have any thoughts about that?
The gatekeeper ain't no gates. We I mean, listen. It's okay. Let me unpack that. We're out here doing it just like someone at the bottom. It may seem very shiny on the outside, and don't get me wrong, I am in a very privileged position. I have 2 books. I can get on the phone with my agent. I can, email certain people, have access to certain people. But I will tell you, this what's happening now, I'm sure we're going to talk about that at some point. This, oh my gosh, just pay attention to Black people in food media. I'll give you an example. I got laid off from Thrillist, and prior to Thrillist, I'm out here hustling. I've never had a full-time job in food media. I can say honestly that I had a relationship with every food publisher from Eater, be it good or bad. The one publisher I never had a relationship with, like never talked to any of their editors or their editor-in-chief, was Bon Appetit. I mean, from Sam Simpson at New York Times to Washington Post, all these people, I can send an email and get some type of response.
Yeah.
Bon Appetit is the only one. So there's no gatekeeping. It may seem like it's gatekeeping, but there isn't. It's literally everything that Bryant and I have worked for. You have no idea the BS that's going on behind the scenes for us to look shiny and to be able to get our work out in the world.
That's gonna all come out.
I don't speak for you, but I had to say that.
I mean, look, it's gonna come out real soon, so everybody gonna buckle up. I know there are a lot of young people who are thinking about how to make their way through this field. I feel like you have such an interesting career because you've just like done so many things. Writing has been at the center of them, but you wrote your own cookbook that was critically acclaimed, beautiful. I'm so happy to see it kind of like reemerging on a lot of these lists that have been coming out over the past couple of weeks. You ghost wrote. Are we saying ghost wrote, or did you just write?
No, my name is actually I negotiated that my
Okay.
name is actually in the cover. So when you open up the Last OG cookbook, which is inspired by Tracy Morgan, the comedian, by his show titled The Last OG, which is in season 3 on Turner Broadcasting, TBS. So my name is actually on the book.
Yeah.
And that came from relationship building. But to get back to your question, what you're getting to, it's like everything I've done has been built on these layers of relationships and work ethic. It's taken a long time. It took a long time for me to just get a call out of the blue and say, hey, I met you at a dinner party and I'm working on a cookbook project. I can't tell you the name. It's for TV. Is this something you're interested in? I thought it was Queen Sugar. Okay. Because they said it was a black TV show. I'm like, what black TV show is on air right now that's food? I'm like, Queen Sugar. It wasn't Queen Sugar. But it took a long time. You're talking about 12 years of grinding and showing up at places that when I was tired and you know, just really doing the work before I could just get a call like that out of the blue. And so no, this hasn't been handed to me at all. And I would say just keep going. That's the biggest thing I tell young people. Keep going. Even when they say no, do it on your own.
Yeah.
If you can.
Yeah. I interviewed Kwame Onwuachi last year, and we talked a little bit about just the racism, the unconscious, the conscious bias that he had to deal with in the fine dining world. I know that you've dealt with a lot of BS. I'm wondering, in this particular moments when you kind of like reflect back and ruminate on just the arc of your career and some of those moments, do you have any thoughts just in terms of like, you know, being a Black woman and having to navigate these spaces where you're often the only Black woman, where you're often tokenized, where you're often, you know, exploited for your ideas and labor and not compensated, and just like, you know, what that means kind of like in a moment like this where these things are really being interrogated and people are talking about them openly, because we've been talking about them. You know, we talk about them in private conversations with friends and colleagues, but now everybody's talking about it. So I guess I'm just generally just wondering how you're feeling just about this moment.
On Twitter, I retweeted someone that said this is so strange that people, I'm paraphrasing here, 10 years ago, were not paying any attention. If I emailed them or if I went to coffee with them, I haven't heard from them in 10 years. All of a sudden now, they want us like, hey, remember me? My email box, my social media box is full of people like doing reintroductions, and it's weird. And a lot of it, I'm going to be honest with you, a lot of my weariness over the last week has been like the bombarding of emails from people who like forgot about me, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, you wrote for the New York Times. I'm like, well, this is kind of the third time. But okay. So it's weird navigating that. I'm gonna be honest with you. I still haven't like figured out like what does this mean, and are these people my friends? Like how to navigate, how to even respond. So a lot of them I've just saved, and some of them I deleted. I'm gonna keep it real with you. But getting back to your core question, I tell people all the time, you better know who you are 100%. Stand firm in who you are and don't waver. Get to know yourself and know one thing. Know what you're not going to do. That when you know what you're not going to do and who you are, nobody can like put you over here and make you do something. You're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I think I've been pretty steady in not losing my Southern vernacular. I'm like, I'm going to talk this way. Yeah, straight up. I'm from the South. I'm sorry. I've stayed firm and like, I want to talk about Juneteenth. And I posted on Twitter today, like 10 years. I just posted like half of the content I put out about Juneteenth. Like, stand firm in who you are, but more so know who you are and know what you're not going to do. Yeah. Because otherwise you get like pulled in all these different directions. and you do a lot of things. In my opinion, I see people, they're trying to figure it out on the job, and I get it. But at the core, I know that I'm like, no, I'm, as my old colleague told me, she was like, Nicole, don't worry. I speak white girl. I'll talk to them. I was like, you go ahead and speak white girl, because I'm not doing that.
I guess, you know, in general, people like you who tend to be kind of like the trailblazers, you know, the more prominent people of prominent Black women in the field, I know you get called on a lot. And I know people are, you know, trying to mine you for ideas and labor. And in this moment, you and a number of us have just been getting bombarded, as you said, with, you know, we need you to help us figure this out. We want to get this right, or like write for us, or do some free stuff for us. And I'm just wondering, just, you know, on the personal tip, you know, having come off of, you know, being at Thrillist and then transitioning back home, or you know, at least not working with them, being a stay-at-home mom with your child, dealing with everything happening with shelter-in-place order. Like, how are you taking care of yourself? Just what are some, do you have any, like, I want to know how you're taking care of yourself, and if you have some tips for Black women who are often in similar situations as you, successful doing it, but then start to get like pulled apart because people just, you know, want everything from you, and oftentimes don't want to pay you for everything that they're trying to get out of you.
Yeah. I mean, first tip, if you have the means and the ability, get a therapist. I have a Black woman who's a therapist who's been helping me over the last, I don't even know what month this is, since February, navigate being a Black woman, a career Black woman, and being a wife and being a mother. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I see a therapist. I was seeing her every week. Now we're to twice a month. And I realize that there are barriers for a lot of people around seeing a therapist. But if you have the means, you should be doing that. Number two, I work with sound healers, energy healers. It's something that I'm like, okay, I got to cut out my budget for XYZ because it's super important for me to do Reiki. I haven't really got into the distance virtual Reiki. It feels odd to me. I did do like 2 Reiki sessions, but I couldn't vibe with it through a computer. But I think if
did you know I'm a Reiki practitioner?
No.
Yeah. I studied under this woman, Paula Terrero. She's from the Bronx. So when I moved to New York, when I first was there, I did my level 2. I'm not a master, but I got my level 2. So anyway.
Yeah, Mika, Aki Baker, Mika is like, I really say this.
Oh, Aki, I know Aki.
Of course.
Yeah.
Aki is a dear friend. She is my like spiritual leader. She's the person when I am at the lowest and that I go to, you know. Yeah, so if you have the means, I think that's super important. And one of the things I did actually being in quarantine, I became a member of Ethel's Club, which I ditched my wing membership before everything blew up with the wing. If people know what the wing. I was like, this place is crazy. I was like, I gotta get out of here. Then all of a sudden, all this stuff started happening. I was like, yeah, I guess it was yeah, my intuition was talking to me. But I joined Ethel's, which is great.
Can you tell people what Ethel's is?
Oh, Ethel's is a co-working space for people of color. It's in Brooklyn, but obviously they pivoted during the pandemic to virtual classes. Like they're doing a big Juneteenth party. I think it's like at capacity. But one of my favorite things, they do this Wednesday, or they had this woman doing this sound bath on Wednesday. And I just fell in love with her. And so she does on Wednesdays and Fridays, she does a sound bath on her IG. And it's just like, oh my gosh, I start the day with that sound bath, just hearing her talk and I've turned into like a Black hippie. I never would think that. Like, where's my incense? Where's my sound bath? But it's super important. I mean, just to get back to the tips, because I'm rambling on, I think it's just super important to find like 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. That's what the last the last 5 months have taught me, like, okay, you've been doing everything for all these people. How much time are you carving out every day for yourself?
Yeah.
So I have to think about that every single day and be super intentional about doing that.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I know a lot of people are really excited to hear about your thoughts on Juneteenth and your second article for the New York Times on Juneteenth, your first one being published back in 2017. Can you take us back to that time? Did you pitch this article or did they come to you? How did that first piece come about?
I'll give you the abbreviated version. I was in the mix of the Times. Sam Sifton got a hold of a memo, basically, where you kind of send all these pictures of like what you would write about if you were going to write for the paper. And so some kind of way, all my ideas got to Sam Sifton's desk. And I saw him at a dinner party. I was a +1 for someone else. There were like 2 people of color there. I was the only Black person there. And he was like, I went up to him and said, "Hello, my name is Nicole Taylor." He's like, "I know you." He was like, "I read your memo, blah, blah, blah. I want you to write for us." I was like, okay. And it just kind of happened. It took months. Let me just back up. It took months for it to actually happen. And crazily, I got the green light in one of the most craziest times in my life. But I made a decision at this point, like, I'm going to push through it. I'm going to do this. And so the first piece I wrote in 2017, actually the first piece was about Juneteenth, and then the second one I wrote about Martha's Vineyard, Black Martha's Vineyard. But if people knew, I mean, people who are in this chat, I see Brooklyn Kalachi in the chat. I see Leslie Ware, my dear friend. She knows around that time. I mean, I had a stillbirth. I'll tell people here. I had a baby at 8 months that did not make it.
Yeah.
And a month later, I wrote this piece when I should have been convalescing somewhere. But I wrote this piece. And to be honest, I'm going to be very honest with you guys. After I wrote those 2 pieces, I didn't think I could write for the Times again because I felt like I was doing it all on the adrenaline, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I don't know if I want to pitch them anything else because I don't know. Did I write that? It was this weird thing. And so that first piece, 2017, I just really wanted to tell like a super basic story about Juneteenth foods.
But before you talk about that, take us back to it because I totally forgot about the Martha's Vineyard piece. Can you tell us about that and just why you felt like you wanted to write about what was happening on the island?
Well, this is funny. Sam Sifton gravitated to me writing about Martha's Vineyard. The Juneteenth piece, I would say, is one of the food editors at the Times. If I'm not mistaken, I think she must have had my cookbook or something. And she was like, "How about you write about Juneteenth? I see you mentioned that in your cookbook." It's funny because I've always thought of Juneteenth as being like no one really cares. Only a certain subset of people care about it. So I'm just like, okay, sure, I can write about that. So I'm gonna be honest with you. That idea memo that was in the hands of all the people at the Times, the Juneteenth thing was not in there. Martha's Vineyard was in there, but not Juneteenth.
So could you have imagined back when you wrote that piece that we'd be like major corporations would be closing down for Juneteenth? People would be talking about Juneteenth being a national holiday.
No. You ready for this? My agent, so people who are tuned in, anyone who wants a literary agent, you can get one. It's not this super gated thing. You can do the work. You can email me afterwards. I can give you a few resources of how to go about picking or deciding who would be the best agent for you. Happy to do that. So my agent at the time sent me an email like, "You should write a Juneteenth cookbook." I'm like, this lady crazy as hell. A Juneteenth cookbook, that's way too niche. I'm like, delete. I don't even think I responded. Okay. I was just like, what is she talking about? Too niche. No. Even this past fall, I'm going to give you guys this story. This past fall, I wasn't thinking about Juneteenth. I was trying to figure out like, oh, I can write a book about brunch, or what about a cookbook for busy moms? My agent was like, "Yeah, have you thought about doing that Juneteenth cookbook?" I'm like, why does this lady keep talking about this Juneteenth cookbook? She was like, yeah, just the climate of what's happening. And this should be a national holiday. This is a white lady, okay? A white lady from the South who is, embedded in publishing here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay. Just like, why? You couldn't have told me a year ago. I would have been like, no. I'm going to be honest with you, no. This is shocking to me. I'm still processing it.
I was looking for this quote, LeVar Burt, and I just want to say the person who asked the question earlier, their name is, I'm looking at their name now. I was like, oh, Afros and Paella. I don't know what I was thinking about. But I can't find the quote, but LeVar Burton said something, talking about just the inequity in advances that white authors are getting as compared to authors of color. This is when that whole publishing paid me hashtag was, pretty trending really heavily on Twitter. And he said something about the dollar amounts that are, given to Black authors or other authors of color aren't necessarily attached to projected sales, but they're more about a value judgment that these publishing companies place on the work of Black authors. And we've had, Black authors and authors of color. We had a number of conversations about, working with publishers and, them not necessarily valuing and paying Black authors and other authors of color what they deserve. So for budding authors, people who might be thinking about getting an agent, getting a book deal, do you have any advice for them in terms of valuing their own work, in terms of, standing firm and kind of advocating for what they want, and just generally, working with, whether it's a small boutique publisher or a major corporate publisher, just how they might want to think about approaching these type of partnerships and relationships?
Well, I mean, I have 2 points. Is that you need to understand the publishing world, period. Before you even go get an agent, you need to understand what does a publisher do? What does your editor do? What does a copy editor do when you're working at a cookbook? Designer, you need to understand the business. It is a business. I don't care how emotional we get, and we do get emotional. When I say we cookbook writers, it's a business for them. Period, point blank. And I think the baseline thing is understanding the business, keywords. What is in advance? What does that mean? What does royalty mean? You need to understand the business first. Number 2.
And I just want to interrupt for a second. There's a book I want to suggest to people if you're trying to understand this world a little better. It's called Putting Your Passion into Print. And the authors are Ariel Eckstedt and her husband, David Sterry. I found that it's one of the most comprehensive, accessible, and actually kind of funny because they're humorous. So it's a good book. Putting Your Passion into Print is a good resource for anybody trying to figure this stuff out.
You can build a better relationship with the agent when you know the business. That's my take. And number 2, who are you? What's your unique voice? What are you talking about? Because you just say, I just want to write a cookbook about stuff I cook in my kitchen. Oh, okay. Who are you? It goes back to the first thing I said, advice. Who are you? What do you stand for? What is your thing? That helps an agent that sell your book. But more so, it puts your flag in the ground. I mean, with Black cookbook authors, I say this all the time. There's no competition between us because we all have such different and unique stories to tell. We all have a lane. It doesn't mean we need to always stay in the lane, but it's enough room for us. But what is your thing? You need a thing.
Speaking of, who are you? Who are you, Nicole? Your social media moniker is food culturist. Tell me about that. Where did that come from? What does that mean for you?
I think that the genesis of that word is curiosity. I'm curious. I'm curious about food and culture and how they connect. And I think I'm a curious person, but at the core, when you strip down everything from me, I am a girl from Athens, Georgia, with blue collar blood running through my veins. That's who I am at the core, and I know that. I don't care what room I step in. I can be as bougie or as blipster as the next person, but when you strip me all down, I have some very basic values in terms of community and family and hard work and work ethic. That's kind of who I am, and it's not even based on food. That's just my personality, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and it's real talk. You know, one of the pieces of advice is I always give up and coming authors, like when you're thinking about working with a publisher, understand that it's a partnership, and you know, come in like is firm in who you are, what your aesthetic is, what your branding is, like all this, because you don't want them putting their hands in it and starting to manipulate and like trying to steer you in directions that you don't want to go in. And like you said, that grounding is so important in like starting to approach these kind of partnerships.
Yeah, and partnership, that word is key, because that doesn't mean that everything is going to go exactly your way, right? You learn how to negotiate and what's important. And the more, I hate to use this word credibility, maybe there's another word, the more that you show that like, oh no, I am who I say I am, the more they'll be like, okay, well, you can decide on your cover this time. But know that in the partnership, going back to it's a business, there are some things that are not going to happen. And I tell people all the time, this is with cookbook publishing, writing a story, any project, have a big grandiose vision, because by the time you get to the finished project, all your big ideas may be kind of dwindled down, you know? So go in there big.
I mean, I feel like that's just in general, you know. I think when people, I just been thinking about that lately with this whole like the uprisings and a lot of the demands that we the people have been making, and I just feel like, you know, for people who are more in the center, who kind of like push back against this whole idea of abolition, and I think when people hear abolition, they don't really like, they just think lawlessness. Like I think people need to educate themselves about what that means. But I'm just like, for the centrists, I'm like, start with abolition. At least like start as far as you can go left and then work your way back. Why are you going to start with like the basics?
Abolish the police. Yes, I said
it. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, so take us back to a couple months ago, or I don't know, maybe this was as recent as a couple weeks ago with this latest piece that you wrote for the Times. You know, the first one, you were laying out, kind of introducing a lot of readers who may not have ever heard of Juneteenth, you know, about, but then tell us more about like, what was the impetus for this new piece?
Thanks for asking that question. Back in 2017, around this time when the story came out, there was only one other story about Juneteenth in the New York Times, and it was about Emancipation Park in Houston. There was nothing else. If you go on the Times website today and put in Juneteenth, I mean, Veronica Chambers did a beautiful multimedia package. There are like a million gazillion articles this time. And I feel like, I don't know if they had been planning this or did it just all happen like in the last few weeks. But for me, I pitched the story in April, late April. And if you, the people who are in this room, if you know, this was pre-Allison Roman Gate. Yeah. So yeah, I think it was like right before all the Allison Roman stuff came out. So I was sitting there like, okay. I wrote this story in the middle of, if you follow what's happening in the world of media, cotton op-ed. I was like, oh my gosh, should I pull my piece? Black staffers at the Times have planned a serious digital boycott and a virtual walkout.
Yeah.
Like, what the bleep is happening here? And I'm writing this Juneteenth piece. I actually, to be honest, had did all my reporting and really wrote the story prior to cotton and prior to the uprising starting. And I filed literally the day when all of the uprisings started to happen in different cities. And I was like, okay, So Monday, I might as well just go ahead and call Greg, text all these people and tell them, see when they're available Monday or Tuesday to talk to them, because I know my editor is going to be like, you need to just go back and this story needs a whole new feel. The original idea of the story was Juneteenth as a celebration. We made it out of COVID almost, like black people have been affected by this virus, and this is our time to take a deep breath. So it was really kind of like, oh, COVID is almost over story.
Right.
No. So I had to go back and talk to all of the subjects: Jonathan Johnny Rhodes, Danielle Bell, Greg Collier, and Eduardo. I talked to them for a second time, which it was, I'm going to be honest with you. I was on the phone talking to Greg Collier, and I cried because he asked me, how are you doing? I tried to hold it together. This was at the end of the interview. He was like, I just want to ask, how are you doing? I was like, it just, tears flew down my face. I was like, it's hard. It was hard because in 1 week, on a Monday, I literally stood at my butcher block and I just cried. I'm like, God, why can't I just write something? Why can't I have a moment and write something for the New York Times when it's like, I'm not in this personal like turmoil? And that's what I felt. But I had to lean on friends to like push through and do it. But I'm not going to lie. At one point I was like, okay, I feel some kind of way because this cotton thing is happening. People were, I forgot to say this part. People were criticizing the Times food section about not speaking out about Black Lives Matter, and saying that, Sam Sifton's newsletter needed to, talk about it. And, me, I didn't just hold this all inside. I mean, I went to my editors and said, hey, I feel weird. This is crazy. And I actually took my ego out of it. And I was like, you know what, Nicole? And I'm sure, and some of your Black people, I see some of y'all in here, some are not in here. I know there have been conversations about me writing the story for the Times. But I wanted to give these chefs shine. It was really about them and getting their stories out here. And I'm like, I think I put enough cultural nuance in the piece that the piece is for Black, it's for all people. But when you read it, there's some lines in there. If you Black, they resonate with you way more than if you're just a person just new to the Juneteenth wagon.
I want to read an excerpt from the piece that I found pretty moving. But this year, the fanfare has been underscored by uncertainty as the killings of unarmed Black men and women, the subsequent uprisings, and the coronavirus pandemic have made the holiday a symbol of unfulfilled promises. Still, many Black Americans will lean into joy as a form of resistance rather than choke on the smoke of inequality. Wow.
Yeah, I shocked myself with that one. I'm not going to lie. I really, for real, this is crazy. I know this sounds crazy. I really can get shit done when I'm under stress and like distress. It's so crazy. When I'm happy and everything is great, the stuff just be a mess. When I'm mad, it's my best work. That sounds crazy.
No, I mean, I understand that, but do you feel like your mindfulness practice has helped you to kind of transmutate some of that energy and not feel like it has to come from a place of like angst and anger, but now it could come from like a deeper well of like, connection and spirit?
Working on it. I'm a work in progress. I'm working on it.
Yeah. I mean, because I'll say this, I tend to have a similar approach where I'm like, if it's stress or something, then a lot of times it's popping. But I found that since I reintegrated my meditation practice every day, that like sometimes my best ideas will come from when I'm just like being still. And just like you said, like if I don't do it, I can tell like my day goes completely different if I haven't like sat in the morning.
Yeah, and maybe now that you said that, maybe I'm just not conscious of how it happens. I'll say this as a writer, as a self-taught writer.
Wait a minute. Somebody said, Therese Nelson said you are the mad rapper of food media. Because Afro Paella said that you got bars, and you do. It's true.
I have to dream. I have to dream when I'm writing a piece, especially when I'm writing something that's, if it's just quick and just, whatever. But if I'm writing a piece that is really meaningful, it's a weird thing. I have to dream about it one time. After I dream about it, I can get up and it just flows. It's the weirdest thing. I have to have I have the most vivid dream about it, and then the next day it's just the words just kind of come. If it's like 2 or 3 days, it's like, oh my gosh, when is the dream gonna come? It's so crazy. I can't really describe that, but
I'm feeling that.
That's the scripture. Yeah.
In terms of like nuts and bolts around being productive as a writer, do you try to carve out like regular scheduled time to get your writing done just to be in more of a practice, or like how does that typically play out for you?
I mean, it's very hard now because I have an almost 2-year-old, right? And before, when I didn't have a kid, I was the person that stayed up really late. My husband and I both. We were the people that we started working at 8 o'clock. We go have our drinks. We come back home. He's working on a second project, and we stay up to 1 o'clock at night, 2 o'clock playing music, having 2 or 3 drinks, and we working and talking. And then we may take a chunk of time. We're not saying anything to each other. We just get stuff done. But now I'm in the bed at 9:30.
Yeah.
But lately, here's the thing. Since the uprisings, I haven't been sleeping at all. Last night, I think I slept like 4 hours. I have a piece that's actually coming out next week. It's going to be a bombshell.
Okay.
It's going to be a bombshell.
Give us the preview. Give us the preview. Who getting lit up?
All I got to say is that it's an op-ed.
Okay.
I couldn't sleep. I got up at like 2 o'clock in the morning. I was like, I cannot sleep. And I was like, I just picked up my phone in the bed and I just started with a note. The next day when I got up, I have a babysitter 2 days a week. Thank God. I was like, okay, I got to pitch this to somebody. This is not a tweet. I don't want to make this a tweet. I want to make this shit stick. I want people all around the world to see this. And I pitched it. It was like a journal entry. I'm gonna be honest with you. My editor, who's editing, I bet she's like, this girl can't write shit. What the hell is this? But it was just like a free flowing piece. And then I was like, this urgency. I got to get this published. And op-ed is very different than writing a reported piece or writing prose, a head note for your cookbook. It's a journal entry, but you're also convincing someone of your idea or of a thing.
Yeah.
So my writing practice is all over the place now, kind of like the world.
Look, Ashe, I understand that. I'm just wondering how you guys are going to be celebrating Juneteenth. I know out in the Bay Area, there are a lot of actions, marches. There's going to be the port shut down. And we feel like it's important because, our girls have just been trying to process all this, figure out, how they can be active and contributing to the movement or whatever. So we're going to do that. And I don't want it to all just be about, protests. As you mentioned in the piece, this is a weekend about just connection, celebration, and seeing that in a form of protest in and of itself. So I'm just wondering just like how you guys are going to celebrate this weekend.
That's funny. I kind of have the same thing. I mean, our whole lives, Adrian and I, we built a life. We've been together almost 20 years. And to be honest, our whole life is a protest. I mean, we are always involved in some kind of movement or in some kind of something to push the community or push Black people forward. And so to be honest, before I got on this call, I took a nap. I didn't really nap. I just kind of laid there for like an hour. And I don't want to go to a protest. I'm keeping it real with you. I don't. I'm just tired. I just want to just relax. So Omar Tate made me, before he left months ago, he gave me some of his fake Kool-Aid, which is like dehydrated fruits. And I actually been saving it for months for Juneteenth. So I made that. I put some Hennessy. I don't even drink Hennessy. But somebody came to our house and brought some Hennessy. But I put Hennessy in here. Omar's homemade Kool-Aid and Prosecco, and I'm just having this drink. I just want to chill. I don't want to watch any heavy movies. I may finish watching Queer Eye Queer Eye on Netflix. I do not want to watch 13. I can't. I just want to just a deep breath. I do want to make Jarrell Guy. Jarrell Guy is a fabulous. She has a book called Black Girl Baking, and she just contributed a really dope recipe and piece to the New York Times. It's a strawberry spoon bread. Ooh. So I'm gonna go to the farmer's market tomorrow and buy some fresh strawberries. They're in season here in New York. Right. And I'm gonna make her spoon bread. I was gonna do it today, but the time ran out. Yeah. So I'll do it tomorrow.
And shout out to Jarrell Guy, who also shot the photographs for Tony Tipton Martin's latest book. What are some of your top recipes for Juneteenth? I know you curated a little subsection on New York Times. So if you were to put together a Juneteenth, let's just dream big, an alfresco gathering with friends, Saturday afternoon, BK, no COVID, no shelter in place. What's on your menu?
Well, I'll say this. This is the first year in like, I see a lot of people in this chat that have been to my Juneteenth celebrations. This is the first year that we haven't had like a shindig with people. So this is interesting. I just kind of don't know what to do, but I would say like Greg Collier for the New York Times piece, he gave me his recipe for the Memphis dry rub. Greg Collier's from Memphis, Bryant.
What? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's from Memphis, born and raised in Memphis. So I doctored up. I added maybe adapted his dry rub, but I kept it pretty much how he had it, just added a few things. But I was growing mushrooms. I grew mushrooms at the beginning of the quarantine. So I had a bunch of like lion's mane and black oyster mushrooms.
Wait. Y'all live in Brooklyn, New York, inside of how are you growing mushrooms, Nicole?
Small Hole. If you're on Instagram right now, you can go to Small Hole. You can buy the kits. It's in a bag. You get one big grow, and then you get a flush out of it, a second one. Oh my gosh. Those mushrooms are really good. I have a lot of friends who don't eat, pork, or they don't eat beef. So I'm always super conscious of like, okay, what can I make that everybody's gonna like? Those mushrooms are really great. And you don't have to do them on a barbecue grill. You can do them in the stove. You can put them on a grill, but you can do them in the stove. I would totally do those mushrooms. Pre-COVID, after COVID, post-COVID, those mushrooms are the bomb. Potato salad. Okay, I'm gonna tell you something about potato salad. I don't like that Southern auntie potato salad. I'm not a big fan of it. What about you?
You mean like the drowned in mayonnaise kind?
Yeah.
No, I'm not. And it's not even on some like, I don't eat the mayonnaise. That's just like, it's so overpowering. It's hard for me to figure out how to get in, but I like, potatoes.
So I'm saying that to say, and Leslie Ware, I keep talking about Leslie. Les, I guess you need to be on the call, girl, because she loves this potato salad too. Actually, Shannon Mustaford, who's a dear friend who wrote Tiki Cookbook. A lot of people don't know that Shannon was my intern.
Big up to Shannon.
Yeah. Shannon made this bomb potato salad with turmeric and fennel, like at a Juneteenth celebration at a picnic that I had years and years ago. And I took a variation of that and put it in my cookbook, and she's in the front of that. But that's my favorite potato salad, and it doesn't have mayonnaise. Word. It's like fennel, turmeric, mint, small potatoes. So it's not your auntie's potato salad, and you don't have to worry about it being like going bad because you got all this dairy in it. Yeah. And it's vegan and it's vegetarian. So I would make that potato salad for sure. Ooh. For dessert, I would buy glazed donuts, split them open. I actually got this trick from Dara Furlow, a friend.
Dara!
Yeah. I went to her house one time and she had donuts from dough, and she split them open and put fresh strawberries on top of them, and then whipped cream. But I think what's super easy is like doing like Anita's coconut yogurt. We both love that Anita's coconut yogurt. It's the best coconut yogurt ever. And just dollop that on top.
Yeah, cool.
That would be my little I mean, of course, yeah, you can do the ribs and the grilling and all that stuff. I mean, listen, I let my husband do all the grilling. I'll prep the meat. I'm a sides person. I feel like you can really cook. You can really cook if you can make sides.
No doubt.
Period, point blank.
For sure. Nicole, thank you so much. Honestly, when I was initially thinking about a conversation, I wanted to go really heavy, but I just wanted to talk to you. I didn't want to like this Juneteenth weekend. We got plenty of time to talk about the heavy stuff, and we got some cool projects. Well, we're gonna definitely be talking about that. But I'm just glad you look great. You seem happy and grounded, and that makes me happy to see you in that space. So thank you so much for taking time. Once again, thank you, Kaiser, for supporting. We really appreciate that. I want to thank everyone who chimed in. There are a lot of friends that I see out there. Big up to Therese Nelson, our compass and the soul of this movement. Oh, it looked like Tertian just popped in. It's the people. The people are here for you, Nicole.
The salty table. Look at all these people.
Yeah.
Oh, I see Angry Wayne. I love Angry Wayne. Hey, Homemade Hudson. Look at this. You got a lot of Brooklyn people that, hey, Kia. Oh, Kia. We love Kia. Yeah, we're gonna have to do this again. We got so much to talk about. Yeah, let's do it again so we can talk about this crazy shit happening in food media.
We're gonna do that.
We can do it